a number of you in your individual capacities have been reaching out to us for specific responses. But we wanted to frame our discussions around what is going on and around this time, because as you are aware, this would typically be the time for our annual Delegates Conference. In our 74th annual report to our conference, the Barbados Workers Union reflected on its work under the theme Navigating the Waves. Navigating the waves at that time, we expressed a number of challenges that were going on. We said that the Barbados Workers Union was experiencing waves of all kinds, which brought unexpected problems and challenges, and some of them brought painful impacts to us as well. At the time of speaking, that would now be 5 years ago, we never imagined that we were in for some rougher times and some rougher waves. We did not contemplate a COVID-19 pandemic, for instance, but we remain then, as we remain now, committed to delivering irrespective of the circumstances within which we find ourselves. So COVID-19 has presented for the trade union movement unexpected challenges and problems. And we're not going to only focus on these, because for the union, like other organizations and individuals, it has also brought with it some opportunities. So this press conference has therefore is one of the initiatives that we thought we could publicly engage and with the media on some of the issues that we are dealing with. So as I said, we would typically be having a conference at this time to bring you up to date on the issues that we will be treating to at our annual Delegates Conference. But one of the changes is that this year there will be no annual Delegates Conference of the Barbados Workers Union. Our conference is held every last Saturday in August, and that would be 2 days from now. The decision not to have a conference was not one that was taken easily. Of course, you know, the country was in shutdown for the better part of 3 months, and it meant that once we came back out of that lockdown period, we would have had a very narrow window within which to meet a number of our constitutional requirements in holding a conference. But we also reached out to our divisions who comprise our conference on an annual basis by vote correspondence to have them indicate their views. We looked at a number of options, virtual format and so on, and these had implications for honoring the union's constitution as outlined in our rules and regulations. So a large majority of our workers from the divisions responded supporting the council's recommendation not to hold a conference this year, and that has the consequential impact of meaning that the executive council, which was elected for a 2-year term back in 2018, would be serving an extra year. It has been deferred until August 2021. So the pandemic has certainly kept things in flux for us, and we have had to be changing a number of things. And speaking of keeping things in flux, I would wish to reflect now on what it has done to the working lives of a number of workers. And one of the topics of discussion now relates to how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted those in tourism. I want to hasten to say that tourism is not the only area that has been severely impacted, although it represents one of the largest single sectors in which there has been the most direct impact on the way that they do business. The Executive Council of the Barbados Workers Union declares that during this crisis, this socio-economic crisis, we've been driven by more than the narrow interests of any one specific group. even when that group is our dues paying membership. So although hotels, for instance, represents about 15% of the union's membership, their concerns have not been narrowly for us the concerns that we've had to preoccupy ourselves with. We have dared, I would say, to keep confidence not only with the membership but people in Barbados, to ensure that Barbados can come through this particular problem we have with a recovery that is not only short term but that is sustainable. One of the things that the Barbados Workers Union has been pushing at each step in our negotiations as we encounter different scenarios with companies across Barbados and indeed at the national level in the social partnership, we've been saying that we need to come out of this with our labor laws intact, perhaps even strengthened, because what COVID-19 has done is that it's shown where there are gaps in the legislation that need to be strengthened so that everybody has a fair break. And we need to come out of this with workers, a workforce that is properly trained, upskilled, and is better positioned to give productive work. Focus now on the challenges. I mentioned tourism, and even as we speak, there are a number of workers in the tourism sector that are reaching the limit of their unemployment benefit. You may be surprised to know that there are a number of workers who have already reached the end of their 26-week benefit, not in this year, but because under the severance payment legislation, a benefit is paid, you get a maximum of 26 weeks benefit in a 52-week period. So let's take the hotels for instance. Hotels typically close after the winter season has ended. Usually around June, a number of hotels effect closures so that they can do things like repairs to their plant and so on. So about 2 months, in some cases 3 months, workers would have been off last year. So due to the lockdown and a very previous closure to the season at the end of March, a number of these workers who were unemployed for 2 to 3 months in 2019 are now again put on unemployment, but at an earlier period. So what it has meant is that the 26 weeks for them, some of them has been exhausted in June. This is a real challenge, because if you no longer have access to unemployment benefit, and if unemployment benefit is actually supposed to tide people over, our concern is that people are not being tied over. So while there's a preoccupation by many in whether or not we should be treating to having workers receive their severance for the BWU, that is not the only or even the biggest problem that we're facing. We are facing a problem that people may very well not be in a position to put food on their tables because they don't have access to any income, whether it's in the form of a unemployment benefit, a wage, or even a wage subsidy as we had suggested as far back as June. And I'll come to that in another minute. Another real challenge that people are having is that even although they're entitled to unemployment benefit, these benefits have not been forthcoming from the National Insurance Department. So this week you heard Simone mention that we've been having town hall meetings where we've been engaging not only the tourism sector, although the major responses have been coming from workers in the hotels, but we've been engaging with workers who have been expressing, some of them, an interest to have unemployment benefits extended. But then there are others of them that are retorting with, what's the sense of extending unemployment benefits because we don't get the benefit anyhow? There are workers who have not received a check as reported to us since May. There are workers who are off from the middle of March and who had to wait until the end of June for their first payment. So while we appreciate that COVID-19 has thrown everything in a tailspin and it has made what have been challenging operations even more challenging, and that includes the NIS, we have a real problem, an immediate problem that needs to be fixed to ensure that workers can access the benefit where they are entitled to it. And where they're not entitled because of the situation I mentioned previously, that's a problem that also needs to be addressed, because if there are no jobs on the horizon in tourism or otherwise, the government still has a responsibility to its people. So the challenge for us is, how do we address this, and what is the BWU's position in this? The BWU's position is that we must address the sustainability challenge of our national insurance system. And that's a priority, and it's a priority for all citizens of Barbados. Why is that a priority? You may or may not know that it is on the BWU's insistence in the first place that we even have social security benefits in Barbados, so that things like pensions, maternity leave benefit, vacation leave with pay, and so on, all of these are things that have been advocated successfully for through the efforts of the Barbados Workers Union. For us to have a situation, even if it is COVID-19, that undermines that social security system to the extent that you in here, all of us, might not have the opportunity to look forward to a pension, should be concerning to everybody. And so that our role in the discussions is not simply to answer the immediate question of if people can get severance in a lump sum, but if they do, then how does that impact the social security system? And how does that impact social security generally in Barbados and social protection? So one of the things that we have been saying is, look, even for the union, in some cases, especially for the union, COVID-19 has meant that we have to move rapidly to upskilling and retooling and re-equipping ourselves for the future of work. In our case, the future of the union. So instead of simply extending unemployment benefits, our view has been that hotels too, other organizations who currently can't work or who can't work as much because tourists are not coming in sufficient numbers to the country, we have to position organizations for a future when things will be better. We have to be able to equip people to be able to function productively in the future of work, so that this time any extension in payments to workers should be linked very closely to the training and retooling and upskilling of workers. Hotels, therefore, and other companies could be using this occasion not simply to have people benefit from additional unemployment, but to use this period in the form of a wage subsidy, and that is what the Barbados Workers Union asked for since June. That will be provided. A person might not go to work and perform the work of a waiter or of a bellman or of a room attendant because there are no guests, but a subsidy is being provided for a period during which people are retraining and upskilling, so that when we open back in full, we can open back more productive and we can be building back better. So that is part of the national discourse that we have been seeking to influence as we navigate through these very challenging times. I said that tourism is not the only area of challenge. We've had challenges in construction as well. All of us heard that construction has been anticipated as playing a very significant role in our economic upturn. We heard it in the BOSS program that money was being shifted from one level to a next to facilitate capital works and so on. And yet there must be concern that we are not hearing about a number of the projects that were due to have started, that we're not hearing that they've actually started.